All right, we'll just give it a few minutes for everybody to join. Hello, everybody, and a very good morning. Before we dive in, let's stop and think. How many times have you had a great idea for a product or service, but then wondered, will people actually want this? That's exactly what today's session is about. Welcome to our workshop, Customer First Understanding Your Market. This session is all about learning the world through your customers' eyes, figuring out who they are, what they need, and why they buy. Because the truth is, even the coolest startup ideas can flop if they don't solve real problems for real people. You'll explore how to do smart market research without making it feel like homework, learn to profile your customers like detectives uncovering clues, and create those ongoing feedback loops that help your idea evolve. We'll also share some simple tools to get you started, from online surveys to social media listening tricks, and so on and so forth. By the end of today, you'll be a step closer to building products and services that people actually love and not just like. So get ready to think, share, and maybe even question some of your best assumptions. Because today, it's all about putting your customer first. It's my pleasure to welcome Dr. Ganga S., our speaker for today's session. Dr. Ganga is a mentor in residence at SINE IIT Bombay and also serves as an adjunct faculty at one of India's leading B schools in the Center for Entrepreneurship. She brings a wealth of experience in mentoring startups across multiple incubators, helping founders refine their business models, understand market dynamics, and adopt customer centric strategies. Her deep expertise in entrepreneurship development and innovation has guided several early and growth stage ventures towards achieving product market fit and scaling successfully. We're delighted to have her with us today to share her insights and experience. Please join me in warmly welcoming Dr. Ganga to the session. Hi, ma'am. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you so much.
Over to you,
So,
ma'am.
sure. Am I audible? And
Yes, ma'am. So the chat box is open for anybody that wants to drop any questions, and we will take questions during the end of the session, or if we feel like it needs to be addressed as we go, we will do that as well.
yeah, so do I have access to seeing the chat box? Chats?
Yes, ma'am. You can also see the
Yeah,
chat.
no, I will need. Okay, thank you, Saranya, thank you, Karthikeyan, and the entire team behind, this wonderful camp. I would say a boot camp. I tried to have a chat with Saranya sometime back to understand how it works. It's pretty interestingly structured. I'm sure you're having a great time, and thank you for the inviting me for being part of this session. And okay, so the way since it's an online session, I would be taking the help of a presentation so that we focus. And for those of you who can't hear me clearly, at least can see some textual data. So I will be taking the help of a PPT, but it will be fairly interactive, but interactive as in through your chats. So please keep a watch on that. It's not going to be a monologue; it's a dialogue with the chat. Yeah. So let me share my screen, and maybe Saranya can give me a heads up if it's visible. So Saranya, can you
Yes,
help me?
ma'am. It's visible. Yes.
Okay, thanks. So obviously the topic is customer first, understanding your market. Well, I'll start with some two small stories. These are real life startups I've worked with, like what Shania introduced. I work with very early stage startups who are probably in the idea stage and are working in the lab with their product and solutions. So I mean, I just picked up two. There are hundreds and hundreds of them, but what came to my mind were the two. So there's this company called Rhino Technologies, which is a startup. You can always Google and find out. And there's also Pico, which was another early stage startup which didn't take off. But then I want to share the story behind it. So the Rhino technology was working with a bunch of engineers, young guys like you, probably fourth year, they were working on a project, with a physiotherapy college which is attached to the institution. They developed a robotic. Now it's very common. This is a 10-year-old story. They developed a robotic device for physiotherapy, especially your lower limb and your ankle, elbows. So the problem, so they encountered while they're working on the project, they encountered that there's a deep problem with this issue of the kind of devices and machines which are there in the physiotherapy clinic. So if you, some of you have been, who've seen it being there directly, indirectly, knows, you would know that a lot of it are automate, a lot of it are manual, which has to be assisted by the physiotherapist there and so on and so forth. So that's one. The second one is, typically physiotherapy is given for multiple reasons. So the second one, they realizes the challenge with the physiotherapy clinicians were that once the so typically any rehabilitation requires about 12-15 sessions for a complete cure. But then by the time they're in the fifth or sixth session, a patient decides and says, "I'm feeling good," and they don't turn up. So the issue of non-compliance. So the other thing is, if so they realized these were some challenges, and they believed that this is a great product they had developed. So it was a very early stage prototype product, and they tried to address it by saying, okay, we'll add a robotic space. So the effort of a physiotherapist standing next to it comes down. Then they'll have some big gamifications, etc. And so that makes it interesting for a patient to come back saying there's some fun thing I can do instead of just doing exercises. So they decided that this is a great product to work with. But when they went to the market, they realized that the physiotherapists were very happy, excited, but then they realized not all physiotherapies therapists reacted in a very same way. Some of them said, they gave cold shoulder. Some of them realized they were, some typically physiotherapists are in their own clinics, in large hospitals, small hospitals, multi-speciality. So they spoke to all possible physiotherapists in all these kind of places, and they realized that there's no uniform pattern of the way a physiotherapist, responds to something new like this. That dawned on them, and they realized that their customer segment was not all physiotherapists, but only a few of them with certain profiles. Then they went closer to them, and they spoke to about close to 100 such physiotherapists. And then they realized the set of people who showed interest in such a solution where typically clinicians, physiotherapists who were in the age of 30s, 40s, who had a physiotherapy education in India, done some masters abroad, they're fairly conversant with technology and so on. And the ones who really were not interested are people in their 50s and 60s, or probably even physiotherapists in government hospitals and multi-specialists. Then they said, oh, okay. So it dawned into them saying that not all physiotherapists are my customers, but it's a certain profile of physiotherapists. Then they went closer saying, okay, now I have the market. And then again, they went closer to each of them. Then they realized that the physiotherapists were not very upcoming and, whatever with the whole solution. Then they went deeper. They spoke to more and more of them. They tried to find out what do they do, why do they do what they do, what are the challenges they were facing. Then they realized one of the biggest challenge the physiotherapist was facing for the non-compliance is not because the patients were not motivated, but the physiotherapist was not able to give any concrete data to talk of their progress. That came in as a great insight. I mean, they always thought non-compliance is because they get bored, that's why the patient would come back. But it is data which was missing. So that is something they took back and they reworked again on the product. And they did a lot of iterations, not only on the product, but what they started, there was a lot of design element and a lot of materials, and there was electronics, mechanical, all of that brought in. What was a bulky, and then another thing in places like Bombay, etc. The physiotherapist said everything is fine, but I can't still keep the device because in Bombay the space is very expensive and I'll have to pay. I don't have a space to keep it. Then they realized, okay, physiotherapy clinics with so much of capacity can only look at it. So just imagine what started as a project. They thought they have a great opportunity. It took 3 years, 2 to 3 years to arrive at these insights. FICO was another company, very similar from campus. they were working on smart meters, and basically a smart meter where it could not only look at take electricity from the grid but also solar. So they developed a smart meter where they realized again a gap is, when infrastructure has both solar and grid supplies, and typically, there is a lot of gap, or there's a lot of wastage and loss happening when it moves from one what to say process to another. So that's when they developed a smart metering where they could actually see that seamless movement. They could also they could also assist the kind of units of electricity consumed, etc. So these bunch of students, like almost fourth year of maybe MTech students, they kind of got an opportunity to work on the product in their university campus. So the smart metering was deployed, the campuses supported it, and it was piloted, and they could see the results, and they were very happy. So this they realized, wow, I've got a great idea, and my campus is supporting it. So I think this is a problem across, and everybody have this issue. Then they picked up saying, okay, do I look at residential, commercial, where all it can be found, where all this need can happen, and then they bottled on saying commercial establishments. So when they realized, okay, let me start in a place like Tamil Nadu in two cities, tier two, tier three cities. So they realized, or they thought that all my commercial establishments are my customer, and they will just call and say that I have a solution for your electricity problem. You will save some money, and they thought they will just jump at it, call them and say tomorrow itself install it, and they were ready with all those products. But when they went closer to each of them, they realized that they were very happy. They said, yes, it's I can see that as something which is going to bring in, help me save uh, electricity, etc. But then, they realized that they were not very excited because they said, okay, fine, it's fine. I mean, it's great. Then they went deeper, and then they kind of arrived, and this was a final product. It was not something like a Rhino where had an opportunity to work on it. They said it is working in campus. I just need to take the same thing and apply it across. Then they realized that and they'd spent money making those devices and stuff like that. Then they got to know a lot of money went in, a lot of efforts went in. Then they got to know saying that uh, customers were concerned about the electricity issues, but that was not the top priority in them. So basically, the cost saving measures they were looking at is not electricity. They were cost saving measures they were looking at, people, employee cost, raw material. So therefore, it was not such a critical thing, and the problem never existed. So even if they try to say, look, I'm able to save some money, they realize it's really not worth putting that effort for saving 1% and 0.5%. So this gives you a classic example of, and finally the company, this bunch of people decided to move on to another product and work on another. So what I wanted to know from the chat, if you can spend 2 minutes, what did company Rimo do right, and what did they do right that they moved ahead, whereas Pico was at a stalemate? Because Rimo has now raised funds, they are increase their team, they are exporting, so they're growing. So what is it that you think this company did right? I just want to know this. Uh, I can't see the chats, but if anybody can read it, or if anybody wants to just kind of share on the chat. Sharanya, is there anybody writing anything?
No, ma'am, I'm waiting to see if we're getting any responses in the chat.
Okay, but my I was audible, right?
Yes, you were clearly audible, ma'am.
So great. In the interest of time, typically one of the things which we did Rimo. So if you look at what was common, they were passionate set of engineers working on a problem which they were very passionate about. They had the skill sets, they had the support infrastructure, etc. But what really went right for Rimo is they took the effort and going, and while they were developing the product and the idea, they developed a product and idea based on certain assumptions and understandings. But then actually went to the market, they realized the assumptions and understandings had to be validated, right? They assumed all physiotherapists. Then they said, no, I cannot assume all physiotherapists. It's only certain physiotherapists. Then they assumed, motivation was a problem. They assumed it was low morale. But then they realized that was the assumption they made, and that's how they were working. But then they went to the market and spoke to the customers. They realized it's not that. They actually wanted data to talk to the customer. So what really you need to understand is that working on ideas one. So you might have a great idea, you might have a great product, but unless you go and get it validated at the customer, there's no business ready for you, right? Now, when we say validated with the customer, doesn't mean go and sell the product. What we're trying to say is when you have to go and conduct a conversation with the customer, you have to find out what are they looking for, how do they do their business today, how do they actually manage their entire I mean, suppose say for example manufacturing. In just a second. So in case of a physiotherapist, they had to go and find out how do they, what is the workflow, they call it a workflow, what is their job, what do they do today, how do they start, how do they get the patients, what kind of protocols are followed. All these data points had to be collected, and in the process try to ascertain where are the problems they're facing while they're delivering the job. Okay, so that is something which essentially has to be done while you're developing the product. Whereas in Pico, the other case, they it worked very well in the university, and they assumed it will work very well, and they thought everything is in place and they just need to go and install it. They realized the issues were very different. University is a commercial establishment, but it can never be compared with a textile company or a shopping mall, right? So therefore, they realized they assumed and they went in, and then they realized that assumptions had to be validated before they really had to go and talk on the solution. So typically, the startups which at the idea stage itself, and what we encourage startup founders to do is that this homework has to be done when you're developing the product, when you're working on your idea, not after the product is ready, because there is a lot of resource which goes waste. So there are three critical stages for every startup team which has to really get the milestones. Three critical milestones in the journey of a startup. One is called the problem solution fit, the other one is called a product market fit, and the third one is called a business model fit. So I think you have gone through a BMC, which is the third one. But today I'm going to be focusing only on the problem solution fit because the topic of the session is called customer first, right? So that is only the first stage, right? So typically along these three stages, there are three key questions which really need to continuously be answered. Who needs a solution and why? Can the startup deliver the value and can the startup make enough money? So these are constant questions which the startup need to keep validating at every stage of the business. It is not just in the initial stage, but at every stage, right? So when you look at answers, or when you look at what really actually needs to be validated, what assumptions need to be validated, and what are the various areas which really emerge, that leads to this slide where we say in as a process you will know yourself as entrepreneurs and founders. That is one. You will understand the ecosystem in which you are placed. So a physiotherapist, they realize there is a huge ecosystem in physiotherapy, where hospitals, clinics, super specialties, 100-bed hospitals. So And it is not only just users, but ecosystem of a physiotherapy. The devices and the equipments which come are distributed through distributors. There are franchisees, there are manufacturers, there there are doctors, there are senior physiotherapists, there are junior physiotherapists, there are exporters. So you have to understand the field, okay, where you, what is the scenario. So today when you go to play, when any of the teams go to play in a arena or in a sports ground, they check, right? In the cricket, they check the pitch condition, they check a lot of things, right? And then only they start playing. Likewise, every startup has to understand all these things. That it is not just about the idea, but a lot of other facts, right? Then what are the different types of markets which are available? Who is your customer? That's the focus. Then you have to develop a problem statement, because today a customer is engaging or looking out for a solution. See, without your product and idea, the customer's business is still going on. Their life is set. Okay, so you will, unless you have a very compelling solution which solves a problem for customer, the customer is not going to move from what they are using to your new product. So as a result, you should be able to frame a problem statement. Then you will have to, for the problem statement to be framed, you have to understand what is the value proposition and business model. I understand you have gone through a business model. I'm going to only pick up value proposition, because we are talking of why should a customer look at you. Okay. So that is where it's called the problem solution fit. Now there are two aspects to it. When you say problem from a customer standpoint, when you say solution from a startup standpoint. Okay. So when we go further, we really, this journey is all about finding and discovering your customer so that you have the right problem solution. The next obvious question is, who is a customer? So typically, let us look at this example, right? There is a car, there is a bike, sports bike, there is some food processing, there's a mobile. So, I mean, I understand I can't interact, so I'm just going to continue. So typically in a car, say your parents must have bought a car, or some of you I mean, you must have gone through the whole process, right? So in a middle class family where, say, you are looking at a first car or maybe the second car, the decision making process, the customer is, typically the one who drives the question is whether the customer who's going to drive the car easy, the person who's going to drive the car, is he the customer? Is it the person who decides which car to buy, is he the customer? The person who finally pays for the money for the car, is he your customer? Or the person who actually gives influences and give references saying that this car is good, that car is good, this brand is good, is that your customer? Likewise, you go to a sports bike. I'm assuming most of you would love bikes and all of that. So again, and typically college kids, boys and girls use it. So if are the college boys and girls your customer, or the parents of the college going children their customer, or is it or is it the influencer, the friends around you who make you buy? Same thing. We all have food processors in our kitchen. Your mother or your sister or your cook, somebody must be using it, right? Or even you as men, I mean, some of the boys and the fathers, all of you use it, right? So the one who uses the food processor, she or he the customer, or is it somebody who decides to buy it, or is it somebody who decides to pay it, or is it somebody who refers? Likewise, your mobiles, right? So therefore, you will realize when we say customer first, there are different avatars of customers. You, when you're looking at developing a product, you should be able to understand, is my customer a decision maker, a buyer, recommender, influencer, and end user? Okay. Now, each of you, depending on the product and idea working, and you need to focus on, well, I would look at a sports bike, right? And definitely the user is somebody who, you know, who is an important person because he or she decides. But the decision maker is the father or the parent or the guardian. So for me, I should also have a value proposition in my product such that the guardian also is in, I can, rope in the decision maker also in the process, right? So for me, when I'm selling a sports bike, it's the end user and the decision maker. So you really need to kind of decide who your customer is. So for that, unless you go through this ecosystem, unless you understand how things happen today, your competition, you will never be able to zero in as to for whom you're going to really. So one is develop the product. Obviously, the user will be using the product, but then to really arrive at the where when we're seeing a customer, what does it mean? A customer, when you say, I found my customer, what does that mean to you? It means that whatever you have developed in terms of your solution or product, you have been able to, reach the customer through proper channels. And that person or the individual or that group of people, or it can be an institution, has found value in what you are offering, has is willing to shift from the existing alternatives to the new one, that is your product, and is willing to pay the money which you want them to pay, and is happy with your services, and is willing to refer your product and solution to somebody else. That is your customer. So if you want this entire thing to happen, there are not just the product, there are a lot of other things also which come into play. But what we are like trying to look at is just using the product. So that's why I called it a problem solution fit. Okay. So therefore we will there is an important tool called the value proposition canvas. Okay. So assuming you pick one profile or one archetype here, as so let's take end user as your customer. So when you look at end user as your customer, typically a customer, does a set of jobs. Like I told you, physiotherapy does a job. So there are certain jobs. So you need to first understand what does a customer do as a job, right? So say a physiotherapy, has a 10. Suppose we're looking at a physiotherapist who has a own clinic or has rented a clinic, right? Let's take a college example, the bike example, right? Or yeah, the sports bike, or the food processor example. It's easier to understand. So, what is the job of the person who's using a food processor, say a cook or somebody who regularly cooks? He or she from Monday to Friday has to, say, let's take an tier one city, or let's take an example situation where he or she is working. So the job is, you have to make your own breakfast, pack it for yourself, eat, pack it, then travel to work, finish your work, then come back and again make your dinner and have dinner, go back to sleep. So in a place like Bombay, there's always a stress of time, and then you and in this whole process, so while he or she is doing the job, you're trying to focus on since you're talking of food processor, you're trying to see um, all those jobs which are related to food, right? So then you will talk to 100 such customers, who are working in a specific area in say Mumbai, and they would say, okay, I wake up at 6 in the morning, I go for a run, jog, I come back, and I like to have a health trick. Then I have my mueslis because maybe they're traveling very far, and then they go back to work, and the work they get some food, lunch, etc., some healthy lunch food. They come back in the night tired, and then there are some stuff which are stored in the fridge, they kind of mix it and eat it. Then this is their schedule from Monday to Friday, but Saturday, Sunday, they spend time buying groceries, and then they start making stuff, making roti atta, making rotis, grinding stuff, all of that, and they prepare basic materials which are required for the week, where they can just par cook it, and so there's a lot of preparation which happens over the weekend, where all of this is done and stuffed in the fridge. So Monday to Friday, it's all about opening the fridge and using it. So if this is the job, right, then you will realize that in the job there are a lot of pains. Okay, there are times when they say I have a food processor, but it doesn't chop fine. So then after that I have to remove and mince it. I have a food processor which doesn't have multiple options. There are times when I want a juice, I'm not able to make a juice out of it. So when you engage with this, when you understand the job and go deeper into it, and ask them what are the challenges you face while you perform your job, then the pains come out. That's when you realize, aha, now this is the pain which they are facing. So while they are continuing to do their job with the existing food processor, but they're looking at something which will really take care of this issue of a pain, right? So, so that is something which comes to you as an information which you believe you can use it while you make your product. Then you would say that, okay, if you know, there are times you say, I really wish I had a food processor which would actually, you know, have some robotic element which will kind of mix two three things with the right proportion, where I can just give some command and it, you know, it is not, I don't want a robotic thing, but a food processor with an attachment where I can remove, add stuff. So that's not very critical, but there are times, you know, twice in a month I feel like doing this, but that doesn't happen. So they're also looking at some gains, right? They don't have any problem with existing. They're happy to have something different. So this is the first step when you really look at a problem solution bit. Understand what the customer job is. Understand what are the pains and gains, you know, they go through while they are performing the job. Okay, so typically, when we say a job of a customer, jobs of customers are three types. One is a functional job, the other one is an emotional job, then there's a social job. So when you say a functional job, it's the activity. A food processor is an activity. Functional as in you need to mash it, you need to knead the dough, you need to crush, or you need to chop. So that's a functional job. There's an emotional job. So in case of a food processor, emotional job would not be so relevant. But I would say an emotional job is, say, in this case, you know, we can say Rolex watch. So Rolex watch, people, so today watch is something, the functional job of a watch is to see time, right? So any watch can work, or even from mobile phones. But there are people who buy Rolex. They buy Rolex because of status symbol. So there are customers who really want to engage for their status symbol. While they want a functional job, but what is important for them is not just the function, but also the perceived status they carry in the market. So then there's a social job. The social job is, you know, something which is, beyond just emotion, where there is a social state. The society, there is a societal angle attached to it, where there are charity and stuff like that. They, you know, these things also, come into play. They want to know how they are perceived in the market, right? And the emotional job is how they feel. You know, they feel that, oh, I kind of, I like the, in this case, the Nike ad, right? In the Nike ad, there's a lot of motivation which comes into play, right? So it is not just selling shoes. So they are selling motivation, right? So that way, every job the customer does, or when you understand, try to understand what job they do, and you have to be, and when you engage, when you actually try to understand what jobs they perform, you have to mentally try to fit it in, saying, okay, here's a customer only looking at functional, here's a customer who wants an element of emotion and social. So this input will really help you kind of decide where you want to focus while you're developing your product. So therefore, there is a pain and a gain element. When you understand what pains, it can be, how do you know what is a pain and what is a gain when you try to get the data from the customers? One is, you know, there are negative emotions, they'll say it's too costly, they feel bad, you know, they're not happy with the solution, they're finding it difficult for adoption, you know, they're very paranoid. And pains are things like, you know, they always say, in the case of a food processor, they say, I'm always late to work because half the time the food processor doesn't do what it's supposed to do. So these are ways to understand what are the pains they go through, you know, while they perform the job. So again, it's important to understand whether all pains are important pains, or some pains are pains which are willing to live with, and some pains are pains which cannot be tolerated. So you again then filter out and decide what kind of pain should really matter to you. Why you're doing all this? We are doing all this because finally we want the customer to buy the product which you're developing for the price you want them to buy. If you want that to happen, all these things matter. You should be targeting the right pain. It should be one of the most critical pain. It cannot be one of the many. You look at it from your own experiences when you buy your own personal stuff, right? Unless it's very critical, we don't shift. Unless it's very important, we don't shift. Likewise, even the customers, there are different level of pain points. The gains obviously is they're looking at savings, easier life. Okay, they're looking at a positive social consequence, and the adoption is very smooth. They say that like when you buy a new phone, and thanks to Google that you're able to create a backup, and you buy a new phone, it takes no time for you to shift all the data back. There's a lot of delight there, right? Before that, when maybe if you look at 15 those old phones, the data is in one phone, it is one phone. But now with the cloud where data can be housed and so there's so much of delight which is coming, right? So these are big gains. Phone is a phone. That time also we are using it to call, now also we used to call. But the gains are so many, it has become easier, we are connected with people. There is so many other comforts which have emerged as part of this whole journey. That's why some of the phone companies did not stay, some moved. I mean, they couldn't survive, right? So it's essential for you to really understand the pain and gains and then only get into the kind of solution you want to work. So therefore, this value proposition canvas, which is a tool, very important tool. So if since you've all gone through a BMC as a session, so if you remember BMC, what the BMC was it had a right side of the canvas and it had a left side of the canvas. The most important thing is the middle of the canvas, which is what is the value you offer, and the right side of the canvas, what is the customer segment you're targeting. So the value proposition canvas is part of that BMC. So on the right side, like we discussed, you have to identify who your ideal customer profile is. Like I told you, the ICP, when is ideal customer profile for the physiotherapist is physiotherapists, doctors who are in the up to 40, 45 years of age, staying in a place like working out of tier one cities, owning the clinics, inclined to technology. So these are typically the ideal customer profile, and this you arrive at after a lot of research. Like I told you, how you can go about finding it out. Then you identify what jobs they do. While you identify the jobs, then you identify once you've listed the jobs, then you identify what are the pains they go through while performing the job, what are the possible gains they would like to see while they perform the job. Once you're clear on this right side, then you move to the left side, and now your job, your ideas and products come into the picture, which means if you're developing a product, okay, if you're developing a specific product, okay, so once you've done with this part, like I told you, then when you're developing a product, okay, the idea, you will see whether you are actually, developing a feature which is a gain creator or a pain reliever. Okay, so when you develop a product, there are features of a product, there are various there are various facilities of a product. You need to see those facilities or features you're developing. Is it solving the pain or is it helping with the gain? So therefore, we call the features as pain relievers and gain creators. Unless your product does not give the benefit of solving a problem or creating a gain, your product will not work. So this is something which is extremely important. So we do a mapping. We say, okay, these are the paints. Okay, now I look at my product. Well, there are 10 paints. Like I told you, if you see this slide, there are so many paints, right? You might want to look at only the one on the red here on the extreme. You might say that out of the 10 paints, the last one is what I'm planning to start off with. Therefore, my product feature has a pain reliever which addresses the 10th pain. Okay, so that's how these two slices kind of get connected. Likewise, they want 10 gains, but whereas you are looking at the topmost gain, and you do have a developer feature which is creates that gain. So that you kind of do your connect. Only then you work on the product. So when we say customer first, you have to go through this process and then develop your product. Okay. So all of this is feasible only when you talk to your customers. If you don't talk to your customers, then you will never get an idea. Remember the example I gave you about the physiotherapy. He spoke to at least about 100 physiotherapists, not one, not two. And you have to not only talk to the end user. Now, the next question is, how do I know whom do I talk to? If you're at a stage where you have all kinds of customers, decision makers, buyers, recommenders, all of them. So what we generally tell, what is ideally to be done is, at the stage you're in, you have to talk to all of them. Okay, try to understand the job of the decision maker, the buyer, the recommender, influencer, understand the job, understand the pain. Then you decide whom you want to focus on, right? So you have to converse with each of them. And when you converse with them, you will not talk of the product. You are here to only collect data. So if you have to develop this, if you have to develop this template, it's all about collecting data. You product comes at the last. First you collect data by conversing with them. That will help you create an ideal customer profile. It's called ICP. Once you've created an ICP, an ideal customer profile, and you know what you want to help them with, then you shift to making the product. So therefore, extremely important to have the conversation with the customers. So therefore, what when we say customer, now again when we say customer, I hope now you're clear. It is not only end user. There are various other customer archetypes. You need to really understand their needs, their underlying emotions. You need to engage with them. Then you need to analyze the pattern and data. At least 50 to 100 people you have to talk to. Okay, and then analyze the pattern and data, and then see who's the kind of people you need to work with. So what do you converse with? The next question. So like I told you at the beginning, each of you develop your product based on certain assumptions, right? And you have assumed on a lot of things, right? You have assumed on uh, you have assumed here, right? You have assumed the ecosystem, you have assumed the value proposition, you have assumed the business model, you have assumed the type of markets, you have assumed a lot of things when you started. Okay, so when you have gone ahead, and that's a starting point, right? So once you have started off with those assumptions, then you need to conduct conversations and validate if those assumptions exist or not, right? So after you have validated those assumptions, then you go back to your product. Okay, you collect all the data, you study the data, you go back to your product and rebuild on the product. So there's a concept called lean startup method. Okay, today this is nothing but lean startup. So you have some ideas, you go to the customers, you talk to them, take inputs, come back and again rework on the idea, build it, again go again test it, come back and again rework till you get the right problem solution where the customers are happy with what you have developed. Which means if the customer is happy with what you have developed, what does it mean? It means they see clear benefits from what you have product you have developed, and these benefits are truly solving helping the customer solve a critical pain problem, right? And till that stage, it's a continuous journey which you need to continuously iterate. Okay. So I think with that, I would, and this journey can go anywhere. Like I told you in the physiotherapist case, it took anywhere of, it can take a lot of, it depends, but it's not something like you meet 5, 10 customers. It has to be 50, 100 customers. It has to be geographical also. What is relevant in north of India, what is relevant in east of India can be different. So if you're keen on, geographies in a specific geography, in a geography, different states have different, insights coming out. So You need to really have that clarity and go and talk to those kind of customers. Unless you have the clarity on that, you cannot develop a product, or you will not have a you. You might have people coming and saying, "Great, I'll test your product." They will take it as samples, but nobody will be willing to pay for it. Okay. Thank you so much. I'm just stopping my slide here, but happy to take questions.
Ma'am, we didn't have any questions on the chat, but then I
Okay.
will, if we have students who would like to reach
Yeah.
out to you, I will
Yeah.
make sure that they connect with you on LinkedIn and take it forward from there.
Sure. Sure. Sure.
Sure.
Sure.
Thank you
Sure.
so much, ma'am. Thank you for your time. And it was a
Great.
very insightful session. Thank you to everybody that joined us today. And
Okay.
we look forward to hosting more sessions going forward. Thank you,
Yeah.
ma'am. Have a great day.
Okay. Thank you. Bye. Thanks for it.
Thank you all.